Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yashodanandana Brajajanarandana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajika Acharya Ashtotarshta Shri Shimare Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to the assembled devotee. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 61. Lord Balaram slays Rukmi, text 19 through 23. Text 19, word meanings. Ete Sham, of these, Putra, sons, Pautraha, and grandsons, Cha, and Babuvu, were born, Kotisha, by the tens of millions, Nirpa, O king. Mathura, the mothers, Krishna Jati Nam, of the descendants of Lord Krishna, Sahasrani, thousands, Cha, and Shodasha, 16. Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha, Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha, Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha, Etesham putra pautrascha, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha, Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha, Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha. Ladies. Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha, Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha, Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jati Nam, Sahasrani cha Shodasha, Etesham putra pautrascha, Babuvu kotisho nripa, Matara Krishna Jatinam Sasani Chashodasha. Translation. My dear King, the sons and grandsons of Lord Krishna's children, numbered in the tens of millions, 16,000 mothers gave rise to this dynasty. We can chant together. Hirajovacha katam rukmya riputraya pradaduhitaram yudhi krishnena paribhutastam hantum randram pratikshate etad akyahi me vidvan dvishor vaivahikam mitaha. King Parikshit said, how could Rukmi give his daughter to his enemy's son? After all, Rukmi had been defeated by Lord Krishna in battle and was waiting for an opportunity to kill him. Please explain this to me, O learned one, how these two inimical parties became united through marriage. Anagatam atitam cha vartamanam atindriyam Vipakristam vyavahitam samyak pasyanti yogina. Mystic yogis can perfectly see that which has not yet happened, as well as all things in the past or present, beyond the senses, remote or blocked by physical obstacles. Purport. Here King Parikshit encourages Shukadeva Goswami to explain why Rukmi gave his daughter to Lord Krishna's son Pradyumna. The king stresses that since great yogis like Shukadeva Goswami know everything, the sage must also know this and should explain it to the anxious king. Shri Shuka Uvacha Vrita Swayam Vare Sakshad Anangong Yutastvaya Ranya Sametan Nirjitya Jaharaika Rato Yudhi. Shukadeva Goswami said, at her Swayamvara ceremony, Rukmavati herself chose Pradyumna, who was the re-embodiment of Cupid. Then, although he fought alone on a single chariot, Pradyumna defeated the assembled kings in battle and took her away. Yadyapyanusmaran vairam rukme Krishna vamanitaha yatarad bhaginyaya sutam kurvan swasupriyam. Though Rukmi always remembered his enmity toward Lord Krishna, who had insulted him, in order to please his sister, he sanctioned his daughter's marriage to his nephew. Purport. The answer to King Parikshit's question is given here. Ultimately, Rukmi approved his daughter's marriage to Pradyumna in order to please his sister, Rukmini. Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Today is the appearance day of Srivas Thakur, so I'm going to speak about that. Srivas, his name means the abode of Sri. He's also sometimes called Srinivas. Usually we reserve Srinivas for Srinivas Acharya, but Srivas Thakur is also sometimes also called Srinivas. So I compile a bunch of notes here, see what I can do with them. First I came across something by Satyaraj Prabhu had written. I found it online. It may be from he wrote a book on the Panchatattva. First I should say something about Srivas in general. In the Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Sarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. So 5 tattvas in one, Panchatattva. We know Srila Prabhupada, the first published part of Chaitanya Charitamrita was that one chapter, Adi Leela chapter 7, which he titled Lord Chaitanya in 5 Features. So that chapter introduces us to the Panchatattva. So Panchatattva, 5 tattvas, and the Jiva tattva there is represented by Srivas Thakur, Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll find quite a bit this phrase, Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta. Because of all the Gaur Bhaktas, Srivas is considered to be the chief. One of the reasons for that is that, well, actually, Srivas is an incarnation of Narada Muni. Recently, I came across in one commentary in Brihad Bhagavatamrita where it was stated, I don't forget the exact language, but the idea is that Narada Muni is the number one bhakta, you can say, or at least the bhakta in the marginal potency. So, in one sense, he has a very special position. There are many special devotees, of course, but he's very significant in that he's just like Srivas Adi, so he's the chief. From him, Srivas and then all the others. So also you can say Narada Muni and then all the other devotees. So he holds a unique position. It's like he represents the marginal potency. In fact, that's what he does in the Panchatattva. So he has a unique position in that sense. And he's extraordinary also in Chaitanya Leela. And we see this especially in Chaitanya Bhagavat. All the pastimes practically took place at Srivas's house, or they started from there. I was going through all the chapter summaries of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, and practically every one of them it says, one day in the house of Srivas Thakur. So that was the center of the action in Chaitanya's Leela while he was living in Navadvip. Now their association goes back right from the beginning, actually. And before I read this, I'll say some more. Srivas Thakur was older. He's from a family of 5 brothers. A lot of times just 3 of the other ones are mentioned. But Srivas, he was the second. There was one older. I've seen his name mentioned a couple of different ways. Jaladhar was one name that I saw for him. He was the older brother, and Srivas was the second. Then Sri Nidhi, Sri Pati, and Sri Rama. Sri Rama was the youngest, and he's mentioned generally in Chaitanya Bhagavat as Ramai. I was a little confused at first. I was thinking, wait a minute, who's this Ramai they keep mentioning here? Then I figured, oh, Ramai must be Sri Rama. Just another name for him, like a nickname. So he's the youngest brother. So he plays several different, he's in several different episodes or anecdotes in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. So these 5 brothers, their family was originally from Srihata, which is now called Silyate, and that's in Assam, which is the extreme northeast part of India. And then they moved to Navadvip before the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Srivas Thakur and his brothers, they were among that select group of Vaishnavas who were lamenting the condition of people in Kali Yuga. Even in Navadvip, which is a great center of learning, they tend to be worshippers of Durga, materialists in other words. So they were lamenting the situation of people, fallen condition of Kali Yuga. So they would gather together at the house of Srivas and at the house of Advaita Acharya, and they would have Harinam Sankirtan. Before Lord Chaitanya appeared, they were already having Kirtan. They were Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. So they were chanting the holy name and praying to Lord Krishna to descend. So this is something here from, let's see, what book is this? Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natakam of Kavi Karnapur. Kavi Karnapur is the son of Shivananda Sena. He's the one who, didn't he suck Lord Chaitanya's toe, I think? And Lord Chaitanya told him, recite, and he just a young boy, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, started reciting Sanskrit shlokas or creating them. So he was empowered by Lord Chaitanya to write, so he wrote a play called Chaitanya Chandrodaya Natakam. And in the first act, this is what Satyaraj writes here. It says, Lord Chaitanya asked Srivas Thakur if he remembers how he was saved from death and how he was at that time infused with Narada Shakti. Srivas answers that he does remember and proceeds to tell the following story. Before the Lord came into my life, Srivas said, from childhood to 16 years of age, I was wild, merciless, offensive to Guru and Brahmanas, and just had a generally restless heart as hard as wood. I was proud, conceited, and even in my dreams I never heard or chanted the Lord's glories. Then, perhaps because of some unknown previous pious act, a kind-hearted person came to me in a dream and said, O Brahmana in name only, O restless-hearted one, who can give you advice? You will not listen to anyone. Still, I tell you directly, you have only 1 year of life ahead of you. Then you will die untimely. Do not throw your short remaining period of life away on useless things. The next day, awakening at dawn, Srivas remembered the good advice he received in his dream, and he was unhappy that his life would be short. I decided then and there, he said, that I would give up all my misdeeds. I made a vow to try to understand the ultimate goal of human life. And soon thereafter, in the Narada Purana, Narada Purana, which he wrote, or it's about him anyway, in the Narada Purana I found this verse, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalau nasjeva, nasjeva, nasjeva gatiranyata. So we all know what that means. I considered this a direct message from Lord Krishna, Srivas continued, and I immediately gave up all materialism. And forgetting everything else, I took shelter of Lord Hari's name alone. This gave me great peace while I waited for that moment of death, which was supposed to come less than 1 year later. It was during this period that I went to the home of Devananda Pandit, a renowned teacher of Srimad Bhagavatam, hoping to hear his lucid commentary on various texts. Now it seems to me what's happened here with this writing of this is that Kavi Karnapur has taken from Chaitanya Bhagavat the seed of this pastime which is written about there. Lord Chaitanya talks to Srivas during one of his ecstasies, Lord Chaitanya's ecstasies, and he's angry at, Lord Chaitanya is angry at Devananda Pandit because he knows what took place here. So it's described somewhat differently in Chaitanya Bhagavat, but the basic idea is there, that Srivas Pandit came to where Devananda Pandit was reciting Bhagavatam to his students. So he comes upon this class that's going on, and he says, while listening to the story of Prahlad Maharaj, Srivas told the Lord, the predicted moment had arrived when he's going to die. I lost consciousness, and under the spell of that final moment, I fell from Devananda's balcony onto the courtyard below. Then, within one precious moment, someone rescued me from the jaws of death. Understanding that I was still alive, I was overcome with gratefulness. Again, I stood trying to keep my balance. My dear friends brought me to my home. I realized that at that time, O Lord, you brought me back to my senses. You saved me and infused me at that moment with Narada Shakti. The Lord confirmed that this was true, and Advaita Acharya concurred, adding, Srivas is glorious. He is the home, Vasa, of glory, Sri, and therefore he is called Srivas Thakur. So then Satyaraj Prabhu makes some little commentary here. He says we shouldn't think that he became Narada at that point, but he was already Narada. So oftentimes we have these pastimes where something manifests at a certain time in history, although it's an eternal fact. So it's an eternal fact that Srivas Thakur is the incarnation of Narada Muni. So his place, Srivas Angam, is just next to Yogapit, just up the road from our Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir. That's the place where Lord Chaitanya enacted so many pastimes, especially the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya, in his youth, Srivas Thakur had a lot of association with him because, as I said, Srivas Thakur was older. He was at least as old as Lord Chaitanya's parents and maybe older. And they lived just next door to Lord Chaitanya's parents, Sachi Mata and Jagannath Mishra, and they were friends. Before the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they were friends. And as soon as Lord Chaitanya was born, of course, they were part of his life. They were like his aunt and uncle, practically, or like a second parents to Lord Chaitanya, because they lived right next door. And Malini, after Sachimata had Lord Chaitanya and was recovering from giving birth, then Malini personally came and helped her, like a servant, practically, and helping her take care of her little baby also, Nimai. So Malini, she's actually Srivas Thakur's wife. She was Krishna's nurse, Krishna's wet nurse in Krishna, or eternally she is Krishna's nurse in Krishna Lila. She appeared as Malini. So in Srivas's house, many pastimes took place, and one is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, has to do with this Gopal Chapal. When the devotees were having Harinam Sankirtan, Lord Chaitanya would only allow a select group of devotees to take part. Pure devotees only were allowed, others need not apply. And many people, they could hear from outside the boundary walls, they could hear this ecstatic chanting going on there. And there were different kinds of reactions, of course. But these Smarta Brahmanas didn't like it at all. They complained, oh, they're chanting so loud. Now it's the time where the Lord takes his rest. Sometime in the calendar year, Lord Vishnu takes rest. Maybe it's during Chaturmasya. So they said, they're going to wake up Lord Vishnu with this loud chanting. He's going to be angry. Then what's going to happen to us? So there were different reactions like that. And they told the Kazi, of course, and then we had that whole pastime. And this Gopal Chapal, he was just envious. And he, one night, during the night, he put the paraphernalia for worshipping Durga Devi outside the home in the courtyard of Srivas Thakur. So in the morning, Srivas Thakur came out and he saw this. There's a certain flower, I think it's a red hibiscus, I think it is. It's used for worshipping Durga Devi and other paraphernalia, which was clearly, everyone could recognize, oh, this is Durga Puja has gone on here. So Srivas Thakur, he called all the Vaishnavas. He said, just see, now I've been discovered. It's been revealed. I'm actually not a Vaishnava, I'm a Durga Bhakta. And secretly, I'm worshipping Durga Devi. Now all of you can testify this is the fact. And here's the evidence right here. So all the devotees were very angry. They just cleaned up the place and threw away all the paraphernalia. And Lord Chaitanya was especially very angry. He was ready to kill this person. But he didn't kill him directly, but indirectly. Gopal Chapal contracted leprosy. And he was known for his beauty, his fine fingers, and his beautiful nose. Sunasa, beautiful nose. Somehow this is considered important. Actually, it's said about Krishna, prominent nose. Maybe that's why these Rajasthani paintings, which I don't like, they always have these big noses on Krishna. But it's said one of Krishna's features is that he has a prominent nose. So this Gopal Chapal, he had a beautiful nose and beautiful slender fingers. And what happened when you get leprosy? They melted away. So apparently he was pretty miserable. This went on for some time, and then eventually Lord Chaitanya delivered him. Of course, how did he deliver him? He delivered him by saying, you have to get the mercy of Srivas Thakur, Srivas Pandit. You have to beg for his forgiveness. That's the only way you're going to be forgiven. You can't offend a devotee and expect to get away with it. So let me see what I have here. I'll skip around a little bit. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. In Chaitanya Bhagavad, of course, we have more of the earlier pastimes, so I'll get back to those. But Srivas Thakur, of course, he lived in Navadvip next to Lord Chaitanya. When Lord Chaitanya left, out of intense separation, he moved to another town, Kumarhatta. And actually, just a little bit of an aside here. Now, you may know that the niece of Srivas Thakur was Narayani, whose son was Vrindavan Das Thakur. So that's one reason why you can say that Vrindavan Das Thakur knew a lot about Lord Chaitanya's early pastimes because sort of in the family. The niece of, she was the daughter of the oldest brother, who I mentioned before, Jaladhar. That's who, I never knew, I just came across this online, Narayani Devi. But she was just a young child in the house of Srivas, 4 or 5 years old, when Lord Chaitanya was there. And Lord Chaitanya blessed her. If we come to it, maybe I'll read this pastime. But the climax of the pastime is that Lord Chaitanya said, "Chant, Narayani," and cry. And she chanted and cried and rolled on the ground and just, displayed all these transcendental ecstasies of prema at the command of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So she lived in Kumarahatta. That's where I think her father was living there. I'm not sure where that is exactly. I think it's south of Navadvip. And then Srivas Thakur, when Lord Chaitanya left Navadvip, he left Navadvip. Srivas Thakur left Navadvip also, and he moved to Kumarhatta. But he did go see Lord Chaitanya, at least in the beginning, when Lord Chaitanya went to Puri. And there were some pastimes there. Now he appears in the Rath Yatra pastime, where Lord Chaitanya was dancing in ecstasy, and Srivas was in ecstasy watching Lord Chaitanya dancing, as everybody else was. He was dancing in such an amazing way, and indescribable, inconceivable ways. We know how Lord Chaitanya appeared in 7 Sankirtan parties simultaneously. So when Lord Chaitanya was dancing in front of Lord Jagannath, exhibiting all this ecstasy and exchanges with Lord Jagannath, so all the devotees, of course, there's thousands and thousands of people, so they want to see, everyone wants to see. So Srivas was in ecstasy and he was watching, and behind him was King Prataparudra and his servant or secretary Harichandana, his name was Harichandana. So Srivas Thakur was blocking the king's view, and Harichandana didn't like him. He's the servant of the king, so he kept trying to push him aside so the king could see Lord Chaitanya. So Srivas Thakur, he was just absorbed in ecstasy, and he was watching, and he kept feeling someone, and finally he turned around and slapped him. And then Harichandana was going to do something, and King Prataparudra stopped him. He said, "No." He said, "You're very fortunate to have been touched by one of the servants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu." So this is the humility of the king. We just imagine, he's the king. He should have a bird's eye view of what's going on. But he accepted this position of the exalted status of Srivas Thakur. So, now as far as the Sankirtan, it says in Chaitanya Charitamrita that they chanted for 1 year. Because this happened late, of course. Lord Chaitanya during his childhood. Now Srivas, as I was saying, because he was around, he was right there, practically like a second parents, Srivas and Malini. So Lord Chaitanya in his youth, he didn't display being a devotee. He was just a pundit. He was interested in logic and argument. We hear how he used to like to argue with everybody. That was his pastime, to pick on people and get them to argue with him. Or he would try to start debates because he liked it. And he liked to win the debates, so he was conquering and arguing. So Srivas, one time he confronted him. He said, "What is the use of all this knowledge you have? What's the point of it? What are you going to get out of it? Just jnana. If somehow or other this leads you to Krishna bhakti, then it will have some value if you become a devotee." So Lord Chaitanya said, "Oh, by your mercy, someday this will come to pass. By your blessings, I may at some point, become a devotee of Vaishnava like you." So then Lord Chaitanya, not too long after that, he went to Gaya, and there he got initiation. And then when he came back, of course, from Gaya, then he started manifesting his ecstasy. In fact, in the beginning, early, when he was at home with his mother, he started displaying his ecstasies, and one day he just tore the whole house apart, completely demolished the whole thing, threw all whatever was there, kind of paraphernalia they had in their humble abode, just basically destroyed that. Mother Sachi had to go outside and she was just completely afraid. What's going on here? What's happening to my son? He went away, now he's come back, he's a completely crazy person. So Srivas Thakur came and consoled her and said, don't worry, comforted her, said, it's all right. This is love of God he's displaying here. He's become a Vaishnava. You should be rejoicing. This is ecstasy. So she was somewhat calmed down, but still a little worried about what was going on with her son. So Srivas Thakur was right there, you could say, practically. And then, of course, then he was very happy. Then Lord Chaitanya practically lived at his house after that. And then for 1 year they had this Harinam all night long. It would begin in the evening especially, and then they would chant all night long. And different pastimes took place while this chanting, this Harinam was going on. And as I was saying, different people would try to get in. And there was one where some Brahmin, a brahmachari, he was known as a brahmachari, and his claim to fame was that he only drank milk. He lived on milk. So he tried to get Srivas Thakur to let him in. I guess Srivas Thakur, either he let him in or Lord Chaitanya, Srivas Thakur inquired from him. He said, Lord Chaitanya, this person wants to come in and join the kirtan, and he only drinks milk. And then Lord Chaitanya said, so what? You think you can purchase me just because all you do is drink milk? No, he's not allowed. He wouldn't let him in. And then there are a couple of incidents that took place where Lord Chaitanya, he wasn't feeling the ecstasy. We can all relate to that, I presume. But it's different when Lord Chaitanya wasn't feeling the ecstasy, because usually all night long he was in ecstasy. So one night, actually at the end, toward the end of the kirtan, he told Srivas, he said, something's wrong here. What's going on here? And what had happened was that Srivas's son had died. Now, I read someplace his only son, although I didn't see this in Chaitanya Bhagavat, but this may be true because there's no other mention of Srivas's sons anywhere else that I've seen. So his young son died, and the women were crying and wailing in one of the back rooms, and Srivas, he went back there and told them to be quiet, stop this, you can't disturb Lord Chaitanya's kirtan. His son had just died, and this was his reaction. And he said, then he preached to them. He said, we're not this body. It's not my son. He's gone on to some other place and so on. We should just take shelter of Krishna. And so somehow he was able to pacify them and keep them quiet. But still, Lord Chaitanya, a little later, he said, something wasn't quite right. So Srivas said, no, everything was ecstatic. You were in ecstasy. What else is there? Everything was perfectly fine. But what the other devotee said, well, actually, Lord Chaitanya, his son died tonight. And Lord Chaitanya said, oh, no. So then he went to see him. They took him to the room where the boy was still lying on the cot. And Lord Chaitanya brought him back to life. And he said, why did you leave Srivas Pandit? And he said, well, my time was up. We traveled from body to body, and I spent my time here in this body, and now it's time for me to move on. So then he explained that I'm not this body and so on. And then, very reminiscent of the Chitraketu pastime. So everyone was consoled. Then I think he went back to death after that. If I understand, we don't hear anything more about him. But he preached. So another time Lord Chaitanya wasn't feeling ecstasy was because same kind of thing where Lord Chaitanya said, something's wrong here. Some unauthorized person is here. And that time it said some woman, and I think in Chaitanya Bhagavat it does say that it was Srivas Thakur's mother-in-law had snuck in, and she was hiding somewhere in a corner or a closet or something. And then Srivas Pandit found out, because he was asking the devotees, who's here, who's not supposed to be here? Then it was discovered this woman was hiding in the closet, trying to spy on these, because everyone wanted to know, what's all this screaming and yelling and all this going on here? So she wanted to see, and then Srivas said, get her out of here, grab her by the hair and throw her out. So that was his reaction. She may have been his mother-in-law, but That was the way he reacted. So Srivas, he was always such a great, like Lord Chaitanya's, to get to Lord, it's almost like his secretary practically in the earlier pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Just as no one could see Lord Chaitanya in Puri without going through Swarup Damodar. So similarly, so many pastimes, they happened in the context of Srivas Thakur. Now, I have a couple of things here. Let's see. There's something I wanted to read. Here's something. This is from Chaitanya Bhagavat. Some of these are taken from the chapter summaries. From Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wrote a commentary on Chaitanya Bhagavat, and he has chapter summaries. I think this is from one chapter summary. In order to test Srivas, Mahaprabhu one day asked him why he allowed Avaduta Nityananda, whose caste and character were unknown, to live in his house. Now this is also something very significant. Lord Nityananda came to Navadvip when Lord Chaitanya started manifesting his Sankirtan movement. And Nityananda was an Avadut, completely acted like a madman. But he took shelter, and Lord Chaitanya asked Srivas and Malini to take care of him, to shelter him. So Nityananda was living in their house and walking around naked sometime and just doing whatever he wanted to do. In fact, it's said in Chaitanya Bhagavat he actually nursed from the breast of Malini. So, quite an avaduta. So he was living in the house, and people knew he was the avadut. He was known as the avaduta. Sadvaitam savadutam parijana sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam. In that Vandeham prayer, he's referred to as avaduta. So the avadut was living in their house. So Lord Chaitanya asked him why he allowed this avadut to live in his house. Because Srivas, the other thing about Srivas, he was a pundit. He was a real pundit, a real pakka pundit. Very learned in the Shastras. That's why we may not have time to get to this pastime, but when Lord Chaitanya one day wanted to hold the Vyas Puja ceremony, and this was actually worship of Vyas, we call worship of the Guru Vyas Puja, but this was actually worship of Vyas. So he asked Srivas Thakur, first of all, it was in his house, but he asked him to conduct it because he knew all these things, all these rituals, how to perform these things. So he was a first-class brahmana, but he had this avadut living in his house who was just doing all crazy things. So in order to protect Lord Chaitanya asked him, in order to protect the prestige of his family and caste, he should not allow him to stay in his house, although Lord Chaitanya had asked him to. In answer to this, Srivas informed Mahaprabhu that one who has worshipped the Mahaprabhu for even a day is certainly dear to him. Moreover, Nityananda Prabhu is non-different from Mahaprabhu. Even if Nityananda held a pot of wine and associated with prostitutes, or even if he destroyed Srivas's caste, life, and wealth, still Srivas's faith in Nityananda would not be disturbed for even a moment. On seeing Srivas's firm faith in Nityananda, Mahaprabhu became greatly pleased and gave him the benediction that even if Lakshmi Devi happened to beg at any time, Srivas would not face any poverty. So even if Lakshmi Devi herself has to go begging, Srivas is never going to have to beg. And even the cats and dogs in the house of Srivas would have unflinching devotion in Mahaprabhu. Thereafter, Mahaprabhu entrusted Srivas with the full responsibility of caring for Nityananda and returned home. Now this idea about the cats and dogs in his house would have unflinching devotion. This was the benediction from Lord Chaitanya, that the maid servants, that anyone connected with Srivas, even his tailor, there's one pastime, his tailor, Srivas's tailor, came to his house, and he was blessed with Krishna Prema by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just because of his contact, because he had that much connection with Srivas Thakur. And he ran out of the house in ecstasy, chanting Krishna's name and saying, I have seen, I have seen, I have seen. So he was given prema because of his connection with Srivas Thakur. So Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, he's the chief bhakta, so we have to connect with him. If we want to belong to that group, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, sometimes we chant just this part sometimes. Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Vrinda means the group of Gaura Bhaktas, that company, that august assembly. If we want to enter into that, then we have to become the servants of Srivas, get his blessings. So let me, there's a couple of things where I have written out a little bit here. All right, now that's the... Now there's one pastime where when the Muslims were harassing the devotees, I think this was after the Qazi broke the mridanga maybe, or at least Srivas was hearing. Now it said that Srivas was very simple and humble and somewhat innocent, you might say. So he was hearing that the Muslims are going to come and the Qazi himself is going to come on a boat. He's going to come down the Ganga, he's going to come on a boat, and he's going to come in and arrest you, and put you in jail, and put all you chanters in jail. So Srivas was nervous about this. He had heard this, but he was nervous about it. So one day he was walking with Lord Chaitanya. I think this is the pastime. Yeah, here. One day Lord Vishwambar was wandering in the city along with Srivas Pandit. So you can just imagine, Lord Chaitanya and Srivas were just walking along together through Navadvip during the day, enjoying the play, whatever. He was going for a walk. As Vishwambar was passing by a tavern at the edge of town, he smelled the wine. Oh, this might be a different one. Anyway, this might go into the next one. He smelled the wine in the tavern. They had taverns back then. On smelling the wine, the son of Shachi remembered Varuni and assumed the mood of Balaram. Losing his external consciousness, the Lord roared loudly and repeatedly told Srivas, "I will go in." The Lord said, "Oh Srivas, I am going in." But Srivas grabbed his feet and forbade him from entering. The Lord said, "Am I also subject to rules and regulations?" Nevertheless, Srivas stopped him. Srivas said, "You are the Father of the universe. If you break the regulative principles, who will protect them? If one is unable to understand your pastimes blasphemes you, he will suffer birth after birth." So basically that's how he's convincing him. If you enter the tavern, I will give up my life by entering the Ganges. The Lord never breaks his devotees' resolutions. On hearing Srivas's words, the Lord smiled slightly. The Lord said, "I will not enter if that is your desire. I will not make your words false." All right, maybe this is it here. Anyway, the story is, another time, actually, Srivas Thakur was worshipping the deity at home, worshipping Lord Vishnu, and Lord Chaitanya took on the mood of Lord Nrsimha and appeared at his door. Now this was during the time when Srivas was worried about the Muslims. It was on his mind. He was afraid that the Qazi was going to come and arrest him. So he was worshipping Vishnu at home, and Lord Chaitanya came and banged on his door. He said, "The person whom you are worshipping is here. I am he." So he came out and he saw Lord Chaitanya's Nrsimha form. And he said, then Lord Chaitanya told him, he said, "Don't worry about these Muslims." He said, you don't have to fear them at all. He says, if the king comes on his boat, then I'll get on the boat instead of you, and I'll go to the Qazi's house. And I'll tell the Qazi, "Oh Qazi, let's see how powerful your priests are, your mullahs. Call your mullahs here and tell them to have the birds and all the animals cry and chant the names of the Lord and cry in ecstasy." And none of the mullahs could do it. And then Lord Chaitanya said, "But I can do it. I can do that. They will see my power." And then that was at the time. Then he said, Narayani was there, the 4-year-old girl. He said, "I will demonstrate. Narayani, chant the names of Krishna and cry." So then she did. She chanted the names of Krishna and she started rolling on the ground and crying and perspiring and so on, exhibiting these transcendental ecstasies. So this was his way of convincing Srivas, you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about the Muslims coming because I am here. I'm Nrsimhadev. You think you're not protected? I'll protect you from anything. So I have more pages of things, but over time here. So we'll stop. I don't know, anyone like to ask for anything or mention anything else? Janmashtami Prabhu?
There's this verse in the 7th canto, verse chapter 31st, which describes how This is Narada Muni to Yudhisthira. The gopis by their lusty desire, Kamsa by his fear, Shishupal and others by envy, the Yadus by their familial relationship with Krishna, you Pandavas by your great affection for Krishna, and we the general devotees by our devotional service have obtained the mercy of Krishna. And this is Narada's, we the general devotees have received.
Narada speaking to Yudhisthira there.
Yeah, he's speaking to Yudhisthira. And Rupa Goswami and Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, this is a kind of the opening presentation of Ragatmika Bhakti. And Narada Muni is excluded because of, there's an element of awe and reverence because he represents like sadhana bhakti. He hasn't really come to this spontaneous platform. So my question is, it's interesting that he played such an intimate role in, the broadcasting of spontaneous bhakti.
Well, there's one purport in Chaitanya Bhagavad where Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that Lord Chaitanya exhibited all 5 rasas during his leelas. And he explains different devotees in different rasas. For example, the Dham is considered Shanta rasa. And Srivas Thakur is considered to be Dasya with Vatsalya. So at least in that incarnation as Srivas Thakur, he's exhibiting Dasya with Vatsalya. Now, didn't Narada also become a gopi? Didn't he dip into Kusum Sarovar and become a gopi?
I don't know.
I think that's one of his leelas too. Naradiya, Naradi or something, gopi. So Narada's a pretty extraordinary personality, that's what we know he can do. Actually, I just wanted to mention what it came up recently that the Pundarik Vidyanidhi said that Jayapataka Maharaj said, what's his name, our Acharya? Jagannath Das Babaji came up with Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. He said that he was the origin of that. Because we don't find it in our books, but in Chaitanya Charitamrita there's something that's similar. It goes, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Advaita Nityananda, Srivas Gadadharadi Yata Bhakta Vrinda. So it has all 5 of them, at least, this one shloka, Adi 17:333. It has the full Panchatattva in it. So, yes, Ragatmika, Mataji.
You mentioned those 2 pastimes at Srivas Thakur's house where the mother-in-law was hiding. And in the book Gauranga, that Jayapataka Swami tells this, pastimes from the Chaitanya Lila, he says that one would never treat his mother-in-law with any disrespect. And it was Srivas himself who dragged her out by the hair. And when Lord Chaitanya saw this, he says, "How can you treat your mother-in-law like this?" And he said, "I do not know anyone, whether they're my relative or not. I don't know them, because if they interrupt or disturb your pleasure, your ecstasy, I don't know them." And then in the pastime of the son dying, that's when Lord Chaitanya was so touched by Srivas's complete detachment and attachment to Lord Chaitanya that he then benedicted Srivas that now me and Lord Nityananda are your sons forevermore.
That's right, yeah. Nityananda and I are your sons. After his son died, after Srivas's son died, and he exhibited that detachment, Lord Chaitanya said, "We are your sons. Nityananda and I, we're your sons." Janmashtami Prabhu?
with pastimes, usually there's a message to us that, and so I'm not completely clear as to why Lord Chaitanya demonstrated this exclusivity. In other words, that his ecstasy was being intruded upon, by outsiders. What's your understanding of that? I mean, I've got ideas, but...
Well, that's always Krishna's mood, right? I mean, no, we can't crash Goloka Vrindavan. Krishna is the enjoyer, so he enjoys with his eternal associates. Gaurangera Sangigane Nitya Siddha Kaurimane. Lord Chaitanya's associates are Nitya Siddhas, so he was enjoying, he was just beginning to manifest his Leela. Now we know later, of course, he manifested his preaching, you can say, but at that point, he was just relishing, and who does he relish with? In fact, I think there's a sloka like that, isn't it? Only with him does only with his internal associates does Lord Chaitanya enjoy his rasas, his pastimes. So that was an exhibition of that. For the enjoyment, his enjoyment, and for the enjoyment of his devotees. He didn't want that contaminated element to come in any way. It wanted to be completely pure. And it's also, of course, is very confidential. Just like Lord Chaitanya only discussed very confidential topics with an inner circle. So these kirtans were very confidential. A lot of extraordinary things took place that people would misunderstand. Now later, of course, Lord Chaitanya exhibited it more openly. But there, say for confidential reasons, he didn't want everybody to see. As far as I understand, a lot of times, and this comes up also in one place, I forget how it goes exactly, but Srivas says, basically Lord Chaitanya's, I forget what Lord Chaitanya asked, maybe it was about his flute. Krishna was in the mood of, or Lord Chaitanya was in the mood of Krishna, and he asked where his flute was, and Srivas said, the gopis have stolen it. And then Lord Chaitanya said, go on, say more. So then Srivas starts narrating, because he was so learned, so then he starts reciting all these Bhagavatam shlokas and putting Lord Chaitanya more and more ecstasy. So part of these kirtans, it wasn't just chanting the Maha Mantra necessarily, they were enacting rasa. Krishna's Leela was taking place in these kirtans. So very confidential things, and not everyone, just like not everyone can gain entrance or even see the rasa dance. So Lord Chaitanya wasn't allowing everyone to access to this for his own confidential reasons.
But then in his preaching mood, then he just opened the floodgates of love of Godhead and opened to everybody.
Yes, he did. So that's his freedom. He can show more, especially at Rath Yatra, of course. He revealed people saw extraordinary things. But even there, it says that not everybody could see what was going on. The curtain of Yoga Maya covered people's eyes, so maybe not everybody. For example, Lord Chaitanya dancing in 7 parties. Even among his associates, only certain ones could see that going on. So he reveals what he wants to according to his desire, according to the purity, and of course according to the desires of the particular devotees too, and their rasa with him. Krishna Keshava Prabhu.
They were doing kirtan before Lord Chaitanya came. They said that Lord Chaitanya gave the Hare Krishna mantra, but the mantra was already there, and they never.
Yes. Now he came to, you can say, well, really he got things rolling, because these devotees were chanting basically privately, and Lord Chaitanya brought it out and made it the Yuga Dharma and asked them to spread it. He was really the commander. He's the one who said, go out and spread, and he had his devotees preaching. So the chanting was there. The chanting is always there. All of the different dharmas are always present eternally, but they're emphasized more and more at different times. I heard Gopi Pranadhan Prabhu explain it, that he said in former times the reason people didn't chant so much because it was too easy. They couldn't relate to it. They thought you had to do big elaborate things. Then you'd get some reward from God, you get some reciprocation. But just chanting, that's it, just chant? How's that going to work? So somehow that was the way they saw things, so they performed big. Of course, even in the sacrifices, there's of course chanting. Even Om is a name for Krishna, and Krishna's names are there, so there's always Harinam going on. But as we heard in this pastime of Srivas, it was revealed to him, this Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Eva Kevalam shloka, so that it was like really impressed on the devotees. Yes, this is the fact. This Harinam is Kevalam. It's the only thing. So they themselves were chanting, and then when Lord Chaitanya came, of course, and then he broke open the storehouse of love of God, and he broke it wide open and gave it to everyone. Yeah.
It's right after the Krishna Varnam Tushar Krishnam verse in the 11th canto, 5th chapter. There's
Kalim Sabhajantyarya, that verse.
Yeah, there's a description of how the residents or the people in Satyuga, they just wouldn't be satisfied. They were so accustomed to these intricate, like asanas and pranayam, and all these heavy austerities go on for 60,000 years, and they just weren't satisfied with such a simple process as vibrating this 16-word mantra, on their tongues.
Srivas Thakur ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.